Are you new to coaching volleyball? Are you confused about positions, rotations, offense, defense? Don't worry, you're not alone. And I will admit, volleyball is a pretty confusing sport, especially if you've never played before. And even then, it can still be a challenge. So when someone asks you, are you going to run a 5-1 or a 6-2? It totally makes sense if this is your reaction. I'm going to make this very simple for you. At the most basic level, they're essentially asking, are you going to use one main setter or two? That's it. While that makes it easier to distinguish between these two options, there are pros and cons to both and situations where one is usually better than the other. In this video, I'm going to explain how to run a 6-2, which is the two-setter option. Stick around to learn pros and cons of running a 6-2. That way you can show off your new volleyball vocab in front of all your coaching friends. Hi, I'm Whitney Bartuk from GetThePancake.com, and I'm going to be your volleyball teacher today. Since you're watching this video, my guess is that you wouldn't mind helpful coaching tips every once in a while. That's what this channel is all about, so I highly encourage you to subscribe and check out GetThePancake.com for even more coaching resources. Okay, let's get into it. What is a 6-2? As I mentioned, a 6-2 is when you use two players on your team to fill the role of setter. That's where the 2 comes from. But what about the 6? What does that mean? Well, the 6 in 6-2 tells us that there will be 6 hitters on the court. So 6 hitters, 2 setters, doesn't that equal 8? How is that possible when there are only 6 players on the court at a time? I'm glad you asked. It all comes down to the positioning of the players. When you run a 6-2, you're going to have your setter come from the back row. In 99.9% of cases, they will normally play right back as their base position. Side note, if you don't know what base means, I've got you covered. I made a video describing base positions, so you can either go watch that now and then come back, or I'll include a link in the description so you can watch it after this video. Okay, so our setter's in back row, playing right back in base. Every time the ball comes to your team, they're going to run up to the right front area of the court. They're doing this so that they can set the second ball to one of your hitters. As you're probably aware, there are 3 positions in the front row and 3 players in the back row at all times on the court. Since your setter is one of the back row players, that means that you've got 3 hitters in the front row that they can set to. As your team wins and loses the serve, your players will rotate around the court. Now, I don't have a video on rotations yet, but when I do, I'll be sure to link it here. Once your setter rotates into the front row, when you're running a 6-2, that player either shifts their focus from setting to hitting, or they can sub out with another player who comes in to hit. Either way, this person in this position is now a designated hitter instead of a setter. Likewise, the person opposite of them on the court, who is now rotating into back row and was also previously assigned to hitting in the front, they'll either become a newly assigned setter or they'll sub out with another person who will set. Either way, this person in this position is now the team's setter. So to sum it all up, when you're running a 6-2, your players in right back will be the team's setters. You will have 2 players fill this role because one person can only stay in the back row for 3 out of the 6 rotations. Additionally, since your setter is always in back row, every person who plays in the front row gets to hit. Therefore, this offensive system results in 6 possible hitters. 6 hitters, 2 setters, and this is all possible because the setters set while they're in the back row. So that's a 6-2 simplified. Whew! I know, that was a lot of information. And if you have to watch it again, I wouldn't blame you. But if you think you've got it, let's talk about the benefits of running a 6-2. First, simplicity. Despite how difficult it is to understand a 6-2 in the beginning, once you actually start to run it, you will quickly realize that it is actually very simple. A lot of the simplicity has to do with your team only needing to learn 3 rotations. This is because once your players understand where everyone stands while they're in the back row, They basically understand where everyone belongs when they're in the front row. Same positioning, different players. This is helpful with younger teams who struggle to even remember to run to their base position, let alone where to stand on the court while the other team is serving. If someone doesn't remember, there's likely a teammate who will notice and be able to help them out. This lightens a coach's responsibilities too. Playing time is more fair. With younger teams or teams where the focus is on more equal playing time, a 6-2 offers substitution opportunities more frequently, allowing more players to get on the court. One of the biggest complaints that parents new to volleyball have is that Jennifer is a ball hog. What they don't realize is that Jennifer is the setter and it's her job to touch every single second ball. With a 6-2, the setting responsibilities are split between two players. That means that after Jennifer rotates into the front row, Layla becomes the setter. Now she's the ball hog. However, since the role is split between two people, parents don't necessarily notice this discrepancy and feel like playing time is more fair. And honestly, it is. You're giving more opportunities to more players to touch the ball more often. I think that can be a great thing. You develop well-rounded players. When you run a 6-2, you give players an opportunity to be less specialized, which is especially great for younger players. This will be discussed more in the 5-1 video, but because you're giving your setters, in some instances, an opportunity to hit in the front row, you don't pigeonhole your players into only practicing one major skill. This diversity keeps players engaged in the sport and helps reduce burnout over long periods of time. It's a commonly used offensive system. When you're coaching, not only do you want your players to have a great season with you, but you also want to prepare them for the future. The 6-2 is quite possibly the most commonly used offensive system at all levels of volleyball. If you teach your team to run a 6-2, you're teaching them something they'll likely use in future seasons. And the final benefit to running a 6-2, your team has more attack options. If you run a 6-2, you always have 3 hitters in the front row. Other offensive systems eliminate a hitter because that person is setting, which makes it much easier for your opponent to prepare for your attack. With 3 hitters, your opponents can't get ready for your hit as early. So there are obviously a lot of positives to using the 6-2 offensive system, but there have to be some cons, right? Definitely. The cons of running a 6-2. You eliminate a deceptive attack option. Now, when your setter is coming out of the back row, they're not allowed to jump and attack in the front row. This allows your opponent to focus on reading the hitters instead of worrying about an attack from the setter. This is a small drawback, but if you have a talented setter who can also attack in a deceitful way on a second ball, you lose that opportunity with a 6-2. Your setter has to focus on defense first. There's a good chance that your setter will need to pass every once in a while since they're in the back row. This is a challenge for a few reasons. 1, sometimes setters forget to pass. Seriously. They're more focused on getting to the right front of the court so that they can set the ball. And when they get in a rush, sometimes they'll leave their defensive position early, and that means there's no passer, which is bad. Most coaches will spend the majority of their time training setters to set and not do anything else. For this reason, their passing skills aren't always the greatest. So even if they remember to stay and pass, it might not be pretty. If the setter does stay and pass, and it's a good pass, who is supposed to take the second ball? This is why you train your players in what is known as out-of-system play, which is basically a nice way of saying, something went wrong, but we still want to hit the ball. Out of system is beyond the scope of this video, but I'll include a link below for an out of system drill if you're interested. The final drawback to running a 6-2, everyone runs a 6-2. As I mentioned before, this system is extremely common, so many teams will be familiar with the strengths and weaknesses of your offense. This essentially takes away any strategic competitive advantages, especially as your players get older and players are more familiar with the system. In summary, if your team is ready to start playing positions, a 6-2 is a great place to start. I would recommend players with some volleyball experience start using a 6-2 around 7th or 8th grade, but if your team is brand new to the sport, a 6-2, despite its simplicity, might still be too complex. However, now that you have a better understanding of what a 6-2 is, you'll have a better idea of what to use when your team has a little experience under their belt. No matter what offensive system you choose, it's best to teach your team their rotations early. Many teams focus too much on basic skills in practice, like how to hit, how to pass. But when it comes to game time, if your players don't know where to stand, none of that matters. I wish you good luck, and I hope you have a successful season. Be sure to subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up if you found it useful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or requests for additional videos. I make these because I genuinely enjoy helping coaches and would love to hear from you. Thanks again for watching, and one final time, good luck. As I'm editing this video, I'm realizing that although a 6-2 is an offensive system, it does impact where you stand in serve receive. And so I just wanted to add a quick note here at the end of the video that if you're interested in learning more about where to stand in serve receive when you're running a 6-2, please leave a comment, let me know. It's on my list of things to do, but if I know that people are searching for that information, I'll bump it up the list. Thanks again for watching. Have a good one, guys.